Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Tolani, and good to have everyone here. So, tonight's webinar is on how to run Cypress test on GitHub Action. And this is more like an advanced training. Although, again, like we all know, no knowledge is a waste. For those of us just starting out, or those that are new in testing, this webinar is just to open you up, let you see the opportunities in automation and how you can also advance automation to integrating on pipelines. I know currently we have quite a lot of, testers who are good with automating writing script, but they lack the knowledge of integrating with CI/CD pipeline. And it is one thing to know how to write your scripts. It is another thing to be able to automate yourself on CI/CD too. In some organizations here, we have the DevOps team that can assist with integrating your automation tests on CI/CD pipeline. But it's a plus for you as a tester if you have this, skill, this knowledge. You can write your script from scratch, and you can as well integrate it on any CI/CD pipeline too. So that's what this webinar is all about, and I'll be, walking us through. All right, so our objective for tonight's webinar: understand GitHub Actions, why use GitHub, a sample workflow, a demo to us, and troubleshoot if anything arises, then Q&A. All right, so before I dive into the demo itself, it's important I just mention one or two things around GitHub Action, CI/CD to the YAML file that triggers these actions to run on CI/CD and all. So first here, GitHub's stroke CI/CD2. CI/CD stands for Continuous Integration and Deployment Platform. CI/CD stands for Continuous Integration and Continuous Deployment, or Continuous Delivery, depending on the context. It is a set of practices in software engineering to automate, streamline, and accelerate the process of delivering code changes. Still on what is GitHub Action, it's a workflow for automation, or to automate, be it our scripts, our build, our projects, So you automate your test, you build, and you deploy. So like we already know what automation is, it just takes off the hands of human intervention, and when you push your scripts, it does the testing, whatever needs to build gets built, and whatever needs to deploy gets deployed. These are things that can be configured on our pipeline. Then trigger events, runs a pull request to other triggers. So yes, we can set, our triggers. For example, when you want to push to GitHub Action, to Git repo, or maybe at the point of, you want to, create a pull request. These are different triggers that can, automate for us on our CI/CD pipeline. Then finally, the workflow files. So without these workflow files, your test cannot run on a CI/CD tool. So there's a file called YAML file, which I'm still going to show us. This is the file where we configure the steps, the push, the triggers, how we want, our CI/CD to run each steps of execution. So everything is being done in the YAML file. So why use GitHub Action for Cypress? Yes, there are other CI/CD tools that we can use. We have GitHub, we have GitLab, there's Azure, and Jenkins and cypress-io, and so many other CI/CD tools that can perform the same activities on GitHub Actions. And the good thing is, if you are familiar with one, you should be able to use the other, another rather. So if you know how to integrate on GitHub Action, when you come across another CI/CD platform, you should be able to navigate yourself around. Yeah, so it helps us automate. And why do we even, automate on, CI/CD pipeline, early bug detection, also visual reports. You can integrate your HTML report to see what passes, what fails, and continuous feedback as we test. So the GitHub workflow. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a YAML file which I'm going to show us. This is the workflow file that helps us define the workflow name, the events we want to trigger, where we set the runner, and then specify different steps like, installing dependencies, installing Node.js, and executing our test, and finally generating a report. So all these are being done inside our work file. So this is a sample work file. You can see the file name cypress.yaml file. As mentioned here, define the workflow name. The workflow name is Cypress test. Then we set trigger an event. What event are we trigger? We set on push. Whenever there's a push issue. So when we say trigger an event, we are saying run the test on the pipeline. So the trigger event we're setting here, we can see here is a push. So whenever we push to our repo, it automatically, triggers an event, which is it runs the automated test. Then we set runner. So this is where the environment where our test is going to run. So you can see we've set, it runs on Ubuntu 24.04. Then specify steps. So there are series of steps you can specify on your workflow file. As you can see here, we have steps. The first step is the checkout. The next one is the Cypress run. Another step is to install dependency. Another step is to run the test itself. Now, I break down each steps just to quickly explain. I've explained the name, the trigger, which is the push, the job, this is where the test runs, and also the different steps that we have in the YAML file. All right, so now is the time to show us the demo, how this works. And again, this webinar is not to show us how to set up a Cypress project. One of the prerequisites is to ensure there's an existing project. What we want to achieve in this webinar is to be able to run our automated scripts on the CI/CD pipeline. So you're a tester that has knowledge on the automation, but yet to integrate on CI/CD tool. This is an opportunity for you to pick up that skill. And yes, for those of us just learning automation, while you're learning, you can also start, getting your hands on integrating on CI/CD pipeline. And for those of us that are yet to pick up automation, it's also a knowledge that you should have at the back of your mind that when you learn how to write your scripts, also at the back of your mind that you should learn how to integrate on CI/CD pipeline. Yes, so, all right. So please confirm you can see my VS Code editor where I have my YAML file. Tolani, can you also help us confirm? Okay, yeah, I can see the charts. All right, so this is an existing Cypress project.
Yeah, you can see it.
Great. So this is an automation framework built with page objects and uses TypeScript. And the first thing we have here is the workflow. So this is where I created my workflow. So you create a folder called .github. Inside that folder, you create another folder called workflows. And inside the workflow folder, you create a file that must have this .yaml as the extension name. So I created a cypress.yaml file, and inside it, I gave it a name, Cypress test, and I set a trigger, which is push. I set the environment, which is to run Ubuntu, and I created my series of steps, which is to check out the repo, run the test on GitHub Action version 6, install necessary dependencies. And for those of us that are familiar with Cypress, all these dependencies are stored in our package.json file, as you can see. So it's going to install all these dependencies for me. Yeah, then finally, this is what runs our Cypress test. So same thing when you run it locally with this command, it runs on your laptop, but this time around, we want to run it on our GitHub action. So yeah, so how do we do that? So yeah, before I even run it, then I have my Cypress folder here. Inside it, I have my HTTP folder where I have my test scripts. So I've written a series of tests here. So what we are testing is this valid login. So these are the steps to execute a valid login where he enters the username, the email, and the password, and clicks the submit button, then checks, the welcome text. So before I go on GitHub, let me just quickly run this on my local so we can see what is going to run on GitHub action. So I'm going to launch my Cypress here, px Cypress open. So I start my E2E. So I have my test script here. I'm back to our script. Inside my specs is where this login test is coming from. So I click on it, then it begins to run my tests. So the first thing is it launches the URL, then it enters the email, the password, and clicks on the sign in button. And yep, so you can see that was very fast. The clicks were very fast, and this is one of the advantages of automating, speed. Yeah, so I haven't done that. So just to show us what is going to run on pipeline, so I can run it again one more time. So it launches the URL, then enters the email, the passwords, and sign in. Good. All right, so I haven't done this. Yes, so whenever you make a changes and you want to push to the repo, because I've stated there that on push, anytime I push to the repo, just trigger the events. So for us to do that, and another skill we might need to learn is to, familiarize ourselves with some GitHub commands or Git commands rather. So like how to, commit, how to push your code, how to switch to different branches and all. So for me to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a git hard because I've made some changes and right now I want to push to my Git repo. So the first thing I'll do is do a git hard. And the next thing is to enter a commit message using this git command. So demo GitHub action is Cypress. So that's my commit message. And once after I've successfully commit my changes, the next thing is to push to my main branch using this command git push origin main. So once I hit enter, all my changes have been pushed to the repo. So now the next thing I need to do is I need to go to my GitHub account. So you can see now that demo GitHub action with Cypress. That was a commit message I entered. And you can see that it's spinning, meaning it has triggered an event on push and my test is running on the pipeline. So if I open this, I can see, I can expand the Cypress run. Remember the name of YAML file was Cypress run. So it's going to execute the step one after the other. So we just wait. So you can see the test is being executed and you can see the test results says pass. And yeah, and the test was so fast. Everything happened in just 3 seconds. You know, 3 seconds to enter my email, my password, and to click the submit button. So if I go to my GitHub action, I can see that this test passed. Now, what if I want to make my test to fail? So let's say I intentionally change something here. My element for submit button. So I intentionally change it and I save. So I'm going to follow the step again. I'm going to git hard, then git commit. So this time around, I want to demo GitHub action with failed test. Then I do a git push, origin main. So if I come back here now, let me refresh. Yeah, so my commit message says demo GitHub action with failed tests. So now we open our tests is running. All right, so still running. The Cypress run is still running. So we still have other events that needs to run, like install dependency, run the test, and post checkout. Okay, so I can see this test field, and reason being that you remember I changed the element that is required to click on submit button. So now it's saying is expected to find this element, but never found it. So there's no way my test will click on the submit button because this element I added does not exist. So it's expected that this test will fail. And yep, so then the good thing again about Cypress is that it can record screenshots, videos for us, which have been stored in our artifacts. And there's a way we can also generate all these reports. We're still going to talk about all this just in a brief, but not part of this demo. So you can generate your HTML report using Mocha, Awesome Reporter. You can even do something like sending it to Slack for stakeholders to see and all. Yep, so this is my test again. Okay, GitHub action, demo. Yep. So, all right. So this is the last test that I ran. You see one field and all. So this is just a demo of, how we integrate Cypress on GitHub action and how we could, trigger different tests or events to run. Okay, so back to our slide. Yeah, so I've shown us the repository, trigger the workflow, the output on Cypress GitHub Actions, and I download an HTML test report artifacts. So now what next? So what next for us? First is to implement GitHub Action. And what are we trying to say here? I would advise that we also practice this on our own. Try create your own personal GitHub account and follow the steps. If you blocked or encounter issues, challenges, you can always drop screenshot or messages on the WhatsApp group. Then another is to add visual for regression. So like I said earlier, we can also include screenshots, videos of our test steps. And this can be stored on our GitHub Action. Then we can as well as integrate alerts, connect our GitHub to Slack. So whenever a test run, we get a notification on Slack. So what this does, it notifies or alerts the entire team of stakeholders, letting us know that a test has been triggered, the test either passed or failed, Then other things we can also do is use parallelization in splitting tests. So when you want to run, let's say maybe the same test on different browser, or or you want to run different tests at the same time, we can achieve that with Cypress parallelization. All right. So at this junction, I think we can ask our questions. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand so we allow you speak, or you drop it on the chat section. Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks. Sorry, guys, I was talking on mute. Yeah, so Adeshola asked the question, what types of testing can you do with it? Yeah, so any kind of test that you can automate, be it UI or APIs, you can run them on your GitHub Actions. And if it's about what kind of test can we automate, we can automate our smoke test, we can automate our regression test, we can automate our sanity test, some kind of functional test and all. Then API test as well can be automated. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that answers your question. So Adeshola asks that, please kindly shed light on why would you want to run tests using GitHub? So number one, like I mentioned earlier, we have different CI/CD tools, and they all have their own uniqueness, but they run in a similar way. If you're able to use one, you should be able to use two. In terms of why will I want to use GitHub? To answer this, I think it's all about what your company is using for their CI/CD or for their development collaboration. So if you work in an organization that they are using Azure, definitely you're likely going to integrate your automation script on Azure pipeline. If you work in an organization that are using GitHub, so be it the CI/CD tool or platform the organization is using, that's what you likely plug in into. If the organization is using Jenkins, that's what we use. So it's not like at this point, I can't really say one is the best. No, they all have their pros and cons, and some it could be for cost, maybe organization is trying to save costs. They look for the one that is less expensive, but at the end of the day, you can help developers can collaborate, they can automate their workflows, they can automate their scripts as well. Yeah, so that's how I can answer that question. I think this is one of the shortest webinar we've had since we commenced the mentorship program. Yeah, Olariwaju, I'm not sure I get your question, or should I unmute you or you retype it? No. Okay, so Adeshola asks again, why is it important to test your code on GitHub Action before merging it to the main branch? Yeah, so the same way developers, work on different branches. So for example, they have the main branch, which can be the live environment, then they have a staging branch, they have a development branch. Same thing applies to QAs when we are collaborating and automating. So imagine you having more than one QAs on the same project, and so it's important that we work on separate branches, not on the same branch, because working on the same branch will cause a lot of conflicts, issues, a lot of issues. Let me just put it that way. So it's important that we test our code on a separate branch before merging it to the main branch. So if myself, Adeshola, are working on automation script, it's important that when I'm done, I push my code to a staging branch. We test it there, it's fine. When Adeshola too is done, she pushes her code to a staging branch. We test it there, it's fine. When we are well assured that our both tests from my hand, Adeshola is working as expected, then we can now merge our code to the main branch. So these are more like best practices, when working with Git control. Yeah, it's important we test before we merge the main branch. How does the report of automation look like? Is this something developers can? So let me show you what the report looks like. This is a report I have on my local. So if I copy this part, so it's an HTML report that looks like this. So you can even see the video of, the test I ran. If it fails, it's going to take a screenshot. So because we ran just one test, which is login, that's why you have it this way. Assuming we have more than one test, it's going to list all the tests here, and you're going to see the ones that pass, the ones that fails with the red icon. So the question though, is this something developers can fix? So when when you automate on CI/CD and your test fail, the first thing we do as testers is we investigate why it failed. There are many different factors that can lead to test failing on CI/CD pipeline. It could be that your script is faulty, and it could be that there's a bug in the application, and it could even be a configuration issue. So the first thing is to investigate why the test failed. So if the test failed, maybe because the application is buggy or a bug is being detected, then what we normally do is we create a bug ticket and assign to developers. So in most cases, developers won't come here to troubleshoot what failed for you. Software tester owns everything automation. We are responsible for integrating, we are responsible for maintenance, and we are responsible for monitoring each test. So what that report does is it just sends a a general report to like a Slack channel. So even a developer that is interested can go there and check what passes and what fails. Okay, I thought we are going to round up our webinar so soon, and questions keep popping in, which is good. So what's the next question? Okay, how do you run cross-browser testing in CI/CD pipeline using Cypress? That's a course on its own, but you can achieve it with the parallelization I talked about. And you can configure your YAML file to support this, So everything's all around configuration. Hi, Toby, how would you handle automating a login process that includes email verification? So when you say email verification, you're referring probably there's a token or OTP that isn't sent to the email, or you need to click here. So you can, one of the ways I do this or achieve this is I include a request. Yes, there are tools too that you can, use to extract email, but from experience, they are not reliable. It works today, it fails tomorrow. There's so many inconsistencies. So the one that works best for me is I introduce a request. So if I automate a script that sends, what's it called? That's sends a request to my email and I need to fetch that email. I get that endpoint, that's that request. I include it in my automation steps. So it fetches and extracts it for me and I get whatever I need. And that's how I also use it for sign up. I use it for email verification and it works for me. I asked, how can you create a GitHub account? Okay, yes. So I said you should go to github.com, just Google GitHub and sign up. It's very straightforward. How do you report a bug documentation for this automation? Yeah, it's the same way. So like I said earlier, when you find a bug, investigate what failed. If it's an actual bug, then you need to create a bug ticket for it and assign to the developer that should fix. Olaoluwa is a basic author plan. Oh, okay, sorry, that's okay. I guess there are no other questions. Yeah, automation is sweet. Automation is interesting. But like I always, advise, the newbies, don't rush into automation. First, know the foundation, understand manual testing, spend a lot of time, understanding the foundation before you can now dive into automation. If you want to do both at the same time, you end up, becoming those testers that we can't really call testers. So those testers that they just check the happy parts. They don't dig deep, even writing test case, they are faulty, reporting bugs, they are struggling, So like I always advise new testers or beginners, minimum 6 months in manual testing before, I spent 2 years in manual testing before I, started automation. Yeah, so I was very strong in manual before I, moved into automation. So don't rush. Nobody's rushing you. One step at a time. So Tobechukwu asks, how can we know what to put in on Cypress YAML file? So the basic things that you need to know are what I showed you today. This is like a default template. The name, the trigger. Now, when you want to expand, probably you want to start adding like reporting, then you need to start adding. So it's based on your need. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? Is it just to run my test just like I have here? This is fine. Do I want to generate a report? Do I want to send a report to Slack? All those things can still come inside our YAML file. In a scenario when you have flaky tests in Cypress, what are what are possible strategies you implemented in order to integrate with GitHub Action? No, I don't think there's a strategy here. The only strategy I can advise is fix that flakiness first. So anything flaky, fix it or you eradicate it before integrating or in your CIC, because the same flakiness you experience locally is what you are taking to your GitHub action. So how do you write test cases for this? Well, it depends on you. There are different approaches to this. One of my best practices is I use my test case documents as my test case guide for automation. So what that means is I can have another status in front of each test. I can have another column in front of each test cases that says automation, and I can identify what I automated and what I'm not automating. That's my own approach. Yeah. Thanks, Adeshola, for all the questions you asked and everyone that asked questions. Thanks for everyone that attended as well. And thanks for everyone that also putting in efforts, to keep growing. Like we all know, our motto for this mentorship is no limit, no excuse, just growth. I'm sure many of us are familiar with that Snoop Dogg post that I said, I just want to thank myself for doing this, for doing that. So same here, I'm thanking everyone for putting in more effort, and let's keep putting in more effort. Yes, so no limits, no excuse, just growth. And those that have worked with me or that are close to me, they know one thing I don't like hearing is excuse. No excuse. As long as someone has done it, you also can do it. Please, I just joined today's, but please just want to know if we talked about workflow. Yes, we did. I'm going to share the recording. So for those that joined late, you can watch.